My name is Dr. Tameka Bradley Hobbs, and I'm the Library Regional Manager for the African American Research Library and Cultural Center, part of Broward County Library in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. June 19th, or Juneteenth, is the most recent addition to our federal calendar and represents a completion of the story when we talk about the progress of our union. It is on that occasion, on June the 19th in 1865, that Union soldiers reached Galveston, Texas, and were able to read the Emancipation Proclamation, eliminating slavery as it has been known in that state. But in order to appreciate emancipation, you have to understand the period of chattel slavery in the United States. Beginning in the year 1619, when, for the first time on record, we know people of African descent were brought to these shores and made available for sale, African Americans had struggled against the system of oppression and dehumanization, where their labor was exploited, where their families were separated. During that time, they took whatever steps that they could to move themselves towards freedom, whether it be labor slowdowns, destruction of materials, fighting against their slave owners, or outright rebellion. Freedom had always been pursued by Black people in the United States. Emancipation came about, in some ways, in an unplanned way. With the outbreak of the United States Civil War in April of 1861, it was not the intention of the United States government under the leadership of President Abraham Lincoln to end the practice. They simply wanted to contain where slavery existed. But this fracture, political fracture in our nation, led to the possibility of the end of slavery. After a year of bloody battle, Abraham Lincoln began to take progressive steps towards eliminating slavery. First, by moving forward with a plan for compensated emancipation in Washington, D.C. in April of 1862. His next opportunity came after a bloody battle at Antietam in September of 1862. And it was at that point that he issued a preliminary Emancipation Proclamation announcing his intention in 100 days to end the practice of slavery in states that were still in a state of rebellion against the United States. That was very exciting news to African Americans, and as you can imagine, and for those who were living under federal control on December the 31st, 1862, they stayed up all night to wait for the striking of the midnight hour, representing the initial moments of their freedom. That tradition became known as Watch Night. The next opportunity for freedom would not come until the end of the Civil War, when hostilities were concluded with the surrender of the Confederacy in April of 1865. It was at that point that emancipation gradually became a reality for enslaved folks in the South, as the Union Army brought both the news of emancipation and their military force into the Southern United States. That news reached Florida on May the 20th of 1865, when General Edward McCook read the Emancipation Proclamation from the steps of the Haggard House, effectively announcing the emancipation here in the state of Florida. It would take nearly another month for those same Union troops to reach Galveston, Texas, where on June the 19th, 1865, the news of emancipation was read. It's important to clear up a few facts about emancipation. First, the reading of the Emancipation Proclamation in and of itself was a political act. It took the enforcement, usually by U.S. troops, to complete the process of emancipation and enforce the end of slavery. Another historical fact that has been tainted with controversy is the 2-year span between the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st of 1863 and the delivery of the news on May the 20th, 1865 in Tallahassee, Florida, and June 19th, 1865 in Texas. The reality is that even though Abraham Lincoln signed a piece of paper, it took the successful victory of the Union Army over the Confederacy and the presence of federal troops to make emancipation a reality. It simply was a matter of time and conquest in order to fully bring emancipation to all African Americans who happened to be living under that system. But as you contemplate Juneteenth this year, I invite you and your families to consider what it must have been like to be enslaved in those years and receive the news that at long last, after some 249 years, that freedom had finally come and was a reality for their lives. It must have been an occasion of jubilation and joy. The anniversary of emancipation has been celebrated for nearly 160 years here in the state of Florida and throughout the rest of the South. This year, during Juneteenth, we invite you to consider the spirit of survival that is a part of the African American tradition, and we invite you to celebrate freedom, which has been hard-won and must be protected. On behalf of all of us here at the African American Research Library and Cultural Center, happy Juneteenth. Thank you.